have more degrees than a thermometer.
When you're engaged
Stands for their interests. What they like.
There's a lot of
Your
planning.
daughters will behind you.
I believe in mental health.
Make sure that we have mental
We travel together on the path to intentional leadership, one conversation at a time. We go down a new road of insight with an expert guest who knows what it takes to navigate the opportunities and challenges of leadership. Why? Because they've already been there. So grab your compass and whatever else you need, and let's set out, leading the way.
Welcome to Leading the Way. Hi, everybody. My guest today has spent 30 years proving one thing, that leadership is not something you're born with, but it's something you built. Unfortunately, Jim Carlough was not able to make it to some personal matter. And so, because this is the resilient room, we're going to continue. We're going to keep going with this show. Unfortunately, you will not be getting the full 60 minutes, just the 30. However, today we're still going to tackle the idea of leadership and leading with purpose. Now, for anyone joining us for the first time, Leading the Way is where real leaders share what intentional leadership actually looks like from the inside. The real road that they walked on before us. This is how we learn and how we develop our own leadership style, and then take it on and make it ours. And if you're a manager or a leader navigating the unglamorous parts of leadership, stay tuned, because this August, Leading the Way is going all in for you. All right, now for our main topic, leading with purpose. Now, there's an article that I read today that talks about this. And it actually delves into the workplaces of today and how the one skill that is really needed right now among, in the age of AI, the age of data, right? We're in a data-driven world. And not only that, but we're in the age of AI, where things are shifting, and they're shifting very fast. And the article talks about this skill, and it's called adaptability, and you're already familiar with it. Now, the way they talk about it, and I actually posted about it today, and the way they're talking about adaptability is the ability to adapt to the fast-moving world of AI. All these technical things coming into our world, and some taking over certain jobs. The skill of adaptability is a must-have if you want to be able to advance your career, if you want to be able to advance your growth, your leadership, your life in general. And that was the technical topic that was talked about. And in my humble opinion, yes, 100% we need adaptability. In fact, adaptability is one of the pillars of resilience. But it's not the complete picture that I see for adaptability. And let me know if you agree with me on this one here. Because yes, of course, we need to be adapting with the times. We need to be adapting with, whatever the new advances are, we need to be learning. I mean, learning doesn't stop. There is no ceiling to growth, right? There's always new heights to take on, and there's always something new to learn and some new lesson to gain from every experience. But that's not the full picture, though, of adaptability. And this is the argument that I make. The argument is the workplaces, if we're only focusing on adapting to technical specs, which part of adaptability, which percentage of that is human-based, is human-related? Because, you're talking, you and I are human beings. Yes, there's AI. Yes, there's tech tools. But what about us, the human who is doing all the work, taking on the responsibilities, learning all the tech tools, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? The adaptability piece here should actually look at the human version first, right? So what does that mean? Our workplaces are bringing and introducing new tech tools. We are, getting introduced to new things. I don't know about you, every minute. And we have to learn on we have to learn how to use them. We have to learn how to adapt to it. We have to learn how to make it work for us. Now, how about work conditions? How about work relationships, right? Work environments. All of that also needs adaptability, also needs the skill of adaptability. That change, that constant change that we live in, of course, it's inevitable, but how are we preparing our people for these changes? Again, we're looking at the tech tools. Yes, here it is. There's the manual, learn it. Here's the video, watch it. Here is, maybe they can show you how to use it. But then what about the human aspect? What about the relationship? What is that real human connection? Where is the learning in that? Is anyone teaching that to our employees, to our managers who are struggling between staff, they're overseeing their direct reports, and then upper management? What is the process there, right? And so my take on that is that, yes, I welcome. I'm a tech savvy person. Those of you who know me very well, that I love adapting technology and using it reasonably. However, I think far important than the tech tools is that human relationship continue to expand. I mean, especially because our tech tools are advancing. Unfortunately, the relationships are falling apart. You've got people talking to AI now instead of actually going to see a human being. And I'm uh, reading about this and hearing about this. Dr. Arthur Brooks talks about how people are using AI as therapists, and it's completely wrong, because AI is not going to, it may give you textbook definitions of things that it was fed, but it will not relate to your problems. It will not be able to take on, and live your experience. It will not have the empathy needed another human being does. And this is why I think the shift of adaptability needs to also focus on the human experience, right? So, going back to purpose doesn't live in the data dashboards that we all have and use in our workplaces, right? We have, our whys. Companies have their mission statements and vision statements, and this is their goals, and this is what they need to accomplish and everything. But the purpose, and I love how Simon Sinek talks about the why and the purpose. And it all also goes back and relates to the human connection. How can this be translated into data? Right? So here are three things to consider. We are constantly chasing metrics. There's nothing wrong with metrics. Of course, is needed to, measure our expectations, measure goals that we put in place. But if the only thing we do is constantly chasing the metrics and leaving the human side of things, that is problematic. That's when it becomes really problematic. The metrics will tell a story, right? They have their own story to tell. But then you need to translate the metrics. You need to interpret that to what's actually going on day to day. So that's why it could be a trap, because it's not, even though it tells a story, it's not a complete story. Data could tell you what happened, okay? But not who your people are. That takes work on your part. As the leader, that takes work from you, initiative from you to know about your people, right? We need the data, but we also need the human side of the data. So it's not a one-sided thing. And we often get trapped just looking at the data. We say that we are data-driven. And I forget. I was listening to a podcast recently, and yeah, I don't remember who it was, but they were talking about how data driven is not actually the correct phrase here to say, because data driven means you are you're leaving the human side all the way down here, and you're just focusing on the data, and that's it. That's it. And the data tells the story, the what, but it doesn't tell the who and the why, right? Or the how. So that's why you need that side, you need the human. So the correct phrase, which I absolutely loved and agree with, is data informed, which means instead of data driving you, what it's saying is the data is informing your decisions. So there's there's data portion that is informing your decisions, but there's also the qualitative piece, and that is where your your team involvement comes in, and that's where everybody pitches in. And here's the other thing too. When we think data, we always think the numbers, and we also neglect the qualitative side of things, and that's why I want it really quickly. Qualitative is the interpretation. It's so important to have, right? So it's important to keep that. So we don't want to just be data driven, we want to be data informed, so that we're not leaving that human side behind, and that our purpose then at that point isn't just I just want to grow the company, I just want to make money. It becomes more about the people rather than just the whatever it is that you set out to do before. Here's the other thing to consider. Trust is a huge issue, right? The trust piece in the AI world. First of all, when you're using any form of AI, you'll see that they have a note saying that they can make mistakes and that you have to actually, go back and check your work or whatever. And so, one, they're saying that this information they're giving you is not 100% accurate. And unfortunately, what we're trying to do, some places are trying to replace entire positions and jobs and human workers with the AI who can or cannot be trusted. Probably cannot be trusted most of the time, because as we have seen before, it's not just spitting out information that was fed to it. It's constantly learning from everyone that's been using it. And three, in some cases, there's actual lies. So there's no trust piece there, 100%, right? Trust comes in from the human to human relationship, and it actually takes time to build. It's not something that you can just put on the wall and say, in this company, trust is a core value, and it's something that we highly value and highly work on daily. It actually has to be modeled. It has to be shown every day. Your people have to see that, and it comes from transparency. It comes from consistency with your words, right? As leadership, trust is hard to gain. It takes time to build, and unfortunately can be broken really quickly, very quickly, if you, for example, promise something and do not deliver. So this is where, if we are trying to develop our purpose, the purpose for our organization, then we have to look past well, this is their job, they have to do this, versus what am I modeling as the leader in charge? And I love how Simon Sinek puts it, that as a leader, you are not in charge, but you are you take care of the people in your charge. And I absolutely love and adore this statement, because most often than not, the highest leadership in organizations don't see it that way, and they see themselves as in charge. And what they do is demand the work to be done as opposed to, actually showing. They demand trust. They want trust from their employees, but they don't actually give it, and they don't model it with transparency, with consistency. And it's not something, and with transparency, you don't have to be completely, I'm not saying share every little bit. Of course, there is some confidentiality to be kept, but simple things that can be explained, you can be transparent about. I think that goes a long way. And of course, be consistent about it. And if a lot of things that a lot of leaders rather, who do, let's say, break a promise, find it really hard to go back and say, I'm sorry, I broke my promise, or I had difficulty, and therefore I wasn't able to meet, or when they make a mistake, they find it difficult to go back and admit that they made a mistake and own it. And really, these are the things, vulnerability is what puts that trust piece together. And it shows your people that you really care. You really care so much more about the people that you are willing to own the mistake and admit it and bring it in, right? That's what builds trust. And it's not, it can't be built in a spreadsheet, right? Data does not build the trust. This human connection, this relationship building, this transparency level, this owning of your mistakes and broken promises, and trying to provide, an explanation of some sort, that's what build the trust between you and people. And that makes the second point about purpose. And it's very underrated, unfortunately, how you respond to things. Most, and this is not just true to leaders, most people, I'm going to generalize, react to things instead of respond to them. And that's just human nature, right? Because our amygdala is much faster at reacting than our prefrontal cortex. And that's why we jump at things first. And then after the fact, we start dissecting the whole situation. And we realize, oh, I may not have been right. If that's right. But how you respond, that creates the trust piece. Now, of course, there are ways that you can actually learn about your own reactor versus responder patterns and be able to correct that, because there's nothing that these are skills that can be learned, and they can be trained, and they can be corrected. And these are really good pieces that actually help you build the trust with your team. So let's dive just a little deeper into this before we get into the third point of purpose. With the your reactor, I talked about the reactor pattern. What it is this. We know that we react to things, right? And it's when you act on something emotionally, you act on it with your emotions rather than with your rational thinking, because what happens is when something happens and we're triggered, we go into threat mode. The amygdala part of our brain takes us into threat mode, and so we respond to a threat, right? And what steps in and interrupts this reaction is training ourselves, starting with learning about ourselves by building self-awareness, by noticing how we react, noticing how we shift when something is said, noticing what is this pattern? Is there a pattern? And what is this pattern? Why is it developing? How is this taking me from being just neutral in a conversation to jumping up, being really frustrated at somebody? And what was it? What was that being said? Now, there are tools where you could actually, learn more about yourself and build that self-awareness. And my favorite of all time is the DISC behavioral assessment, where you can actually build more a bigger picture about yourself. Are you a dominant personality that is very blunt and very impatient? Are you an influential personality where you just light up the audience and very warm and may talk a lot and get unfocused? Are you a steady personality that is stable and warm around people and inviting, but could really use a lot of time when there's change happening? And are you a compliant personality that's very, very creative, very data driven, highly analytical, but also could overthink things? Now, those different four personalities react differently to things that trigger them. And this is how you get to learn about your reactor pattern. Each one comes with its own ways. And I'll just give you one example. If you are a D personality, you're more likely to act on your impatience. And therefore, your reactor pattern is very quick, very blunt, very fast, right? And very direct, and may even be insensitive and could hurt. And this is something that you have to notice. This is how you start. You have to notice this about yourself. How do you often react? And if you take the DISC assessment, this will help you learn more about yourself more, so that you can actually start to put things together and say, oh, now I see why I'm actually reacting the way I do. And after that, you start to build the response as opposed to the react, right? And then finally, purpose is what keeps you regulated, what keeps us regulated when the data is bad, because not all data is good, right? It helps us. It gives us the avenue on which to build, right? And leaders without that, they crumble under pressure, and there's always pressure at work. And most often than not, we're faced with pressure, and the reaction that I was talking about comes from working under pressure constantly without building that self-awareness, without learning more about yourself and training your resilience muscle. So we need a purpose anchor so that we can make decisions from core values, actual, practical, applicable core values, rather than fear. Most of the time, we make decisions so quickly that because we are afraid of the consequences, or what FOMO, what we are or what we're not aware of, uncertainty, which happens a lot. And so we need that purpose anchor so that it keeps us in the path to where we're going. So when you're thinking about your purpose, data is not a bad thing. It's good to have. But instead of being data driven, take some time and think, how can you be more data informed so that you don't fall in the trap of just chasing the metrics? And when you do that, the data is going to tell you one thing, but the actual human is going to tell you something else. And so I think combined, they work so much better together. And the trust piece, that takes time and that takes work, and you have to be intentional about building trust. It's not something you just think and feel and wish for. You have to be very intentional about building trust with your people, and you have to do it first. You have to be the one to initiate the trust building with your team. And so those together help you see a clearer picture of where you're going. Where's your organization going? And are your employees, are your staff on board with the mission? Is it just words they're just spitting out and they're saying? Does anyone even know what it is? Is it embodied in the work that you do? Because it's not just words that are hung up on the wall somewhere, right? It has to be something practical that can be lived most importantly. If you don't know your reactor pattern and you would like to know, start with your free disc assessment. If this is something of interest to you, talk to me, because I am super, super passionate about helping you find your, not just your reactor pattern, but helping you start building that self-awareness, because it is the foundation of building your resilience. Self-awareness gets you going, it helps you become more observant, not just watch your behavior and watch what you do and that's it. It'll help you start working on some of these areas. And the disc tool does just that. It actually helps you look at the behavior as well and what it means. What are your strengths? What are your blind spots? What are people saying, seeing in you that you're not seeing? What is motivating you? And this is why I'm very passionate about helping people find their strength and areas of improvement and growth to build that self-awareness and start from there, because it's going to help you build, start on your leadership path and create that purpose for everyone. All right, and then this is all the time we have. And next month on Leading the Way, my guest is Colleen Stubbs, and I cannot wait to talk to her. I actually was a guest on her podcast about a year ago. I can't believe it, talking about the disc, exactly that. And I can't wait to have her next month be there. Have your questions ready to go. And I will see you next time.
I have more degrees than a thermometer.
And when you're engaged,
Stands for their interests, or they
There's a lot of planning.